It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
This is Phil Ferguson, and you are listening to the Phil Ferguson Show. It's November, and it's cold. Just got back from Florida a couple days ago, and the cold seems more cold than normal. When we were in Florida for Freeflo, great conference, by the way. It only happens every other year, and it's sold out. And their intention is to have a conference of about the same size next time in roughly 2 years. The dates aren't set yet, but if you want to go, you got to register early. One of the nice things about it is that it looks like it was about 90% people from Florida. And I wish that I had something like that in Illinois. And of course, the smart listener might say, Phil, you could put something like that together. Not going to happen. So just get that out of your mind. But if someone does want to do that in Illinois or any other state, I know who you should talk to in Florida and how to make that happen and how to make it work and how to make it successful and profitable. And a large part of their success is not just that there's one or two people doing it. There's dozens and dozens of people who volunteer their time and efforts and skills to make that a success. So it's not something you can do by yourself. You have to have a whole lot of people. And it turns out Florida has a lot of local community groups. So that's a big help too. So that was great fun. I was absolutely delighted to be there. And I appreciate all the friends that I saw there and met there and re-met there or made new friends there. And also got to see some long-time friends. Matter of fact, a couple of my friends, Seth Andrews, Matt Dillahunty, and Aaron Ra, we were able to recreate a picture that we took about 6 years ago at ApostaCon, if you remember that way back in the day. So a lot of great fun, fantastic speakers. And even though I didn't have a table, because my wife and I went just to enjoy the conference, the tabling setup was perfect for vendors because the tables were all right in front of the main doors, actually in the hallway. So everybody had to walk by them. The energy, the buzz was fantastic. And so, luckily, I had taken with me a little bit of recording equipment. So I'm going to put together 5 or 6 of those interviews later in the show in place of the normal one-person interview. So you can kind of just get a feel for some of the people that were there and the excitement and the background. And I think it was great fun. The other thing that my wife and I did prior to Freeflo is we went to Disney. And one of the places we went, of course, was Epcot. That's both of our favorites. It was the food and wine show. I'm not a wine drinking person, but my wife is. Found several wonderful glasses of wine throughout Epcot. And of course, I had great fun in the Italy. What do they call it? A zone? Region? The part, whatever. The part of Epcot that was Italy. The vast majority of people that work there, 95%, are actually Italians. Somehow this is still legal with Trump in office, but they come over for 1 year, generally in their 20s or early 30s, very young people, according to me. And they're all fluent Italians and fluent in English. And it was great fun for me to practice Italian. And often I would speak for 2 to 3 to 5 minutes with somebody and move to another part and talk to somebody else. Try to find someone who was not really busy or swamped with other customers, talk to them for a few minutes, and then I would have to move on because I don't want to get anyone in trouble for spending their entire day talking to one person. They have a job to do. Later on in our first day, it rained quite a bit around 6 or 7 in the evening, and we stopped at the gelato stand. And if you've never been to Epcot, you're not going to know what I'm talking about, but right outside of Italy, on your way towards Germany, there's a little gelato stand, and my wife and I stopped in there to hide under the awning to get a little protection from the rain. And there were 3 young ladies in there who would normally be serving gelato, and they said that they can't sell anything while there's lightning, which there was lightning in the area, but they also couldn't leave their post. And my wife correctly pointed out that they were a captive audience. So me and the 3 of them, and of course my wife joined in a little bit, had great conversations back and forth in Italian and English for about 15 minutes because they had nothing else to do. So hopefully I didn't annoy them too much. And then, of course, we went to the next country and kind of hid in some stores in Germany for a while until eventually making our way out of the park because we got wet and we had enough. But it was great fun. The other thing that we did is that we went to Hollywood Studios. Yes, Disney's Hollywood Studios to go see the Galaxy's Edge, the brand new Star Wars addition to the theme park. And I am going to talk about that for a minute. So if you've never gone and you want to go and you want it to be a unique surprise to you, I will have spoilers. So this is your spoiler alert. If you're a huge Star Trek fan and you think somewhere in the upcoming future you're going to go to Galaxy's Edge and you don't want it to be ruined by my thoughts and opinions, pro and con, maybe skip forward 5 minutes. I'll try to keep it definitely under that, maybe 3 minutes. So here we go with the spoilers on Galaxy's Edge. The first thought is that the look of it, the look and the feel, absolutely staggeringly amazing. Beautifully done. The buildings, the painting, the markings, some of the store signs were a little frustrating because they're kind of in a certain style, but it still says the name of the place, but you had to really pay close attention. So maybe I would like a sign that would have in Star Trek language or whatever it is, and then English below it, so I would be easily certain where I was going. But the look, the detail, the buildings, the mountains, we happened to go on a day where the park opened at 6 a.m. And we were there at 6 a.m., and you might not be surprised, it was dark. So we got to see the full nighttime lighting effect. Absolutely stunning from a lighting perspective, the colors, the spaceships that were there. Of course, there's the Millennium Falcon and several other space vehicles. I don't know all the proper names. I guess I'm not that big in a Star Trek fan where I know the name of the vehicles, but they were all mocked up. There were characters walking around like stormtroopers, and we saw Chewbacca a couple times passing by. Fantastic. Even the ground that you walk on was clearly concrete, but it was poured in such a way that it wasn't perfectly uniformly level. And from time to time, there were footprints or boot prints or some kind of animal prints in it that were subtle to make it look like it was a little bit of damp mud, so that from time to time someone's impressions would be left for a while. And I thought that was a very, very nice touch, something they didn't have to do. It could have just been straight and perfectly flat, but it wasn't. So even the ground itself was thought out and made to look and feel like you're there. At this time, they only had one ride open, Smuggler's Run, where you're flying in the Millennium Falcon. The other ride is going to open in about a month, maybe 2, so we didn't get to experience that. And this ride was nice. It was okay, but I expected more. And maybe my expectations were too high, or maybe my expectations of a brand new thing based on Star Wars, almost said Star Trek, based on Star Wars would be more impressive. So this ride was basically a flight simulator. They put 6 people in there, and my wife and I got lucky, and we got theoretically the best seats. We were the pilots. And the staging area, and maybe it was meant to be this way, but I don't see why. I was very confused. And when you come in, they give you little colored cards, bigger than a playing card, so that the next part that you go to, a person can see what card you have. And hopefully you can get 6 people with an orange card, and all 6 of those people go into one of the ships, one of the flight simulators. But when we got there, only 3 of us had orange cards, and 3 of us had green cards. And so they put 6 of us together because if you don't load the simulator quickly, the line lasts forever. So that was kind of frustrating. The ride itself, it was nice, but I've done that before. I've done that so many times. I mean, I was thinking of something like Gringotts over at Universal Studio in Harry Potter Land. It wasn't like that. The other things, we had an appointment scheduled for breakfast, and we went and had breakfast there at one of the 2 places that serve food. And again, the aesthetics of it, the cosmetics of it, the look of it, absolutely amazing. We got cinnamon rolls because we weren't really that hungry, and they were meh. I mean, I get better cinnamon rolls at a Panera or even at a Starbucks. It wasn't anything to write home about, and it was a ridiculously high price. They also have this blue and green milk thing going on. I think we had the blue milk, and it was okay. I don't know that I want to have it again. It wasn't really amazing like butterbeer, I think it is over in Harry Potter World. So yeah, I'm going to compare it to that again. Then we get to the shops, and the shops were designed like stalls, and they were basically 8 to 10 feet wide and 5 or 6 feet deep. So they weren't big. You walk in, you do a quick loop, and it looked like the merchandise had just, what is some Star Wars shit that we have laying around? Let's put it on some shelves. And so there were some keychains, and there were some T-shirts, and a couple of hats, and a few stuffed animals. And you walk out because you can't go any further. I mean, you just do a quick little look around. There were several of those, and they just seemed disorganized and chaotic, and maybe that's what they're going for. But it didn't really do it for me. I'm not much of a shopper in the first place, but other places in that park and other parks, often stores have a theme, or they're large and you can go in and walk around. And maybe part of that is that the space that they built this in is limited. So there's only so much they could have done with the space that they have. But I would have rather, instead of having 4 or 5 or 6 little shops, you walk into something that's an actual store. But then it kind of breaks from the theme of feeling like you're in this marketplace. So I get what they were trying to do. It just didn't do it for me. The other thing is that the people in Galaxy's Edge are supposed to be in character. So they say things like rising suns, and that's for good morning. And they say data pad for your phone. And sometimes if you ask questions, they act like they don't know what you're talking about, to kind of play the role that they're not of Earth. And it's kind of like a Star Wars version of Colonial Williamsburg. The big difference, I think, is that in Colonial Williamsburg, you have people that love history, that study history. Often they're retired people that want to be there, and they've studied, and they've done it for years and years and years. Where at Galaxy's Edge, you have a bunch of minimum wage employees who are just trying to get through their day. And it just didn't feel like I thought it was gonna feel. I never for a moment thought that I was not in the Disney park talking to some random employee. They were all nice, don't get me wrong, but I don't know. I think if they can't figure out a way to make that feel more legit, just drop it. Because we were there for 2.5 hours. Now, mind you, we got there at 6 a.m. But by 8:30, even with breakfast, we had seen everything. I forgot there's 2 other things. And of course, this is way longer than the 5 minutes. So if you just jump back in, skip forward some more. But there was a shop where you could make a lightsaber, which is really cool. And they're $200. And that's on top, of course, the ticket and any food that you're going to buy. So it can be very expensive. And I thought, what am I going to do with a lightsaber? I was still tempted, but I didn't get one. I went into the shop where they make them, and there's 8 or 10 stations where people who had appointments were making their lightsabers. And it's this great big space, which, by the way, would make a really nice store. But there was nothing else there except for one counter where you could look at 20 pre-made lightsabers and buy one for anywhere from $99 to $200, $300. So you look at those and you go, I don't want a lightsaber, and you leave. This great big empty space, all about lightsabers. The other store, of course, was where you could go make a droid. And they were, I don't know, probably 6 to 8 to 9 and 10 inches tall, depending on which parts you pick. And again, that was, I think, around $100. And again, a nice big space. And of course, beautifully done. But if you weren't there paying $100 to make a droid, there was really not much else for you to do. So we saw everything we wanted to see in 2.5 hours. Part of it, the reason it was that easy, again, we were there at 6 a.m. So that part of the park was not that full. Anyway, that's way more than I wanted to talk about that. So I'm going to move on and talk about some other stuff. And what we have is I have a couple of emails or a couple of stories sent to me via email, which is really, really handy, particularly in this case, because I've kind of been out of the loop for a week. And I'm just going to say these emails, these stories came from Jared. So Jared, you know who you are. Thank you very much for sending them to me. The first one I'm going to talk about has to do with Fisher Investments. Now, Fisher Investments does a lot of commercials, and a lot of times I have clients or prospective clients who have been contacted by Fisher Investments, and maybe many of you get, like I get in the mail, solicitations from Fisher Investments. They are, I think, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, please do so. They are the single largest registered investment advisor, RIA, just like my business is, in the United States. And they work in all 50 states, just like I can, by the way. But they're huge, absolutely massive. And my impression is that they do an okay job, but their fees are much higher than mine. I mean, it would be great if I could double my fee and everybody would be happy about it because it's a lot of money. And sometimes they get into products that I wouldn't recommend. And it feels a lot more about, it's all about making the maximum money off of the client, not necessarily making the maximum money for the client. So the two things have come together. One, Ken Fisher, the founder of Fisher Investments, got recorded saying some things that were probably really, really bad, really sexist, really inappropriate. And I'm not going to go over them here. You can Google it if you want to, but that upset a lot of people. And some people and companies and unions and organizations that use Fisher Investments have started pulling money from Fisher Investments. And the total is they've lost $2.7 billion with a B, $2.7 billion in clients. I don't know how big they are, but that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And the other news thing is that the SEC has acknowledged that there's 125 grievances. No, I'm sorry, not the SEC. FTC, Federal Trade Commission, has acknowledged there's at least 125 grievances filed against Fisher Investments. And the vast majority of these are things about really aggressive sales tactics. For example, someone gets a flyer or a pamphlet or a brochure from Fisher and says, hey, this looks interesting. I'd like to talk to you more. And they give them their home number to get a call back. And they start getting phone calls at work, which means the salesperson, the commission person, wanted to talk to them right away and found out who they are and where they work and found their work number. And even after the person said, you've got my work number, don't call me here, I'm at work, they kept doing it. They would call home, they'd call work, they'd call cell phones over and over and over trying to do that. And I have had some reports from clients of mine and or prospective clients of mine that Fisher is very, very aggressive in this way. And it's something I don't like. And often I tell prospective clients that I will let them drive the pace of hiring me and or moving money and or setting up accounts and creating a plan. And sometimes it takes 3-6 months because I don't want to be that guy pushing myself or what I do on somebody. If you want to hire me, that's cool. I will take your money. But thankfully, I've done this long enough and I make enough that I don't need any new clients. I don't hustle people. I have had some people that said, no, we've decided that Howard Jones or Edward Jones or John Hancock or whoever we currently use We're not happy with them. We want to move as fast as possible. And they're permitted to push me and contact me and call me and remind me, hey, we want to get this done. So that's all cool, but I don't want to be that person. So they have these grievances, even so far as Fisher Investment. Some of the complaints talk about they're contacting deceased relatives to try to get their portfolios, which I guess could happen, but how do they get that information? And also several of the grievances talk about them talking to senior citizens and talking to people that are clearly, according to the grievances, clearly incapable of understanding what it is they're talking about because of age or dementia or some other age-related problems. And that's not cool. That's not cool. I mean, from time to time, I get phone calls from somebody or, someone says their parents want to talk to me. And usually you can tell that they're not really quite with it. And if you used that to your advantage to get some more clients and get some more business, that's a dick move. Don't do that. So that's some news about Fisher Investments. And like I said, they've lost partly because of this, but mostly because of Ken Fisher's sexist comments. $2.7 billion recently. So bad news for Fisher Investments. If you have talked to Fisher Investments and had either a wonderful or a horrible experience, I would love to hear from you. You can send me an email, Phil@Polaris Financial Planning. And of course, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. If no one responds, that's cool. But if I get a whole bunch of people, maybe I'll do a actual full segment on what they do and how it works. The other little bit of news that I have is about one of my favorite topics, Bitcoin. Woo! Again, from listener Jared. He sent me a story, and it's on CNBC, and the title is, long one here, but the title is, A Single Anonymous Market Manipulator Caused Bitcoin to Top $20,000 2 years ago, Study Shows. So real quick, a forensic study that looked at the relationship to Bitcoin and tether currencies. And so tether currencies are like cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, but they're linked to something like $1. And they may or may not be backed by $1, but it's another way to move money without eventually going to and from dollars. And why would you do that, one would ask? One is because you want to have another layer of security, anonymity, protection, secrecy, or you just find it convenient, I guess. These are also known as stable coins. So they don't go up and down, but they went through all the data and found that the vast majority of the suspicious trading activity that drove up the value of Bitcoin was done by one account. They didn't say who that one account was as a person, but they called they identified this person as 1LSG. Now, whoever 1LSG is, I don't know. Is that the founder of Bitcoin? Because that's still in doubt to this day. But it is a very curious thing, and you can read that article. Of course, go search it if you want more. But I just figured I'd drop a quick little thing here that it looks like the vast majority of the Bitcoin run-up to $20,000 was caused by one market manipulator with the obvious intent of running up the price for reasons unknown to me. Maybe they ran up the price and managed to use that to sell as the price fell down, and they made millions, probably hundreds of millions, maybe billions of dollars, while some other luckily random people that bought Bitcoins for $100 sold at 10, 15, 20, or 15, 12 on the way down. But unfortunately, a lot of the last people in to this panic, this bubble, lost a lot of money. And if you had any doubt, my position on Bitcoin is still no, don't buy Bitcoin, don't buy any cryptocurrency. I'm not saying that it won't go up. I'm not saying that you won't make money. I do not consider it investing. It is gambling, just like you could make money on a horse. You pick a horse that's 10 to 1. If I understand how gambling works, which I'm not sure that I do, you could invest $1,000 and bring home $10,000. It doesn't mean you made an investment. It means you made a bet and you won. So can you bet and win on Bitcoin? It's absolutely possible. I don't see it as a long-term viable strategy. And I will reiterate what I've said before, that not only do I think Bitcoin will not work, I am convinced that Bitcoin is inversely scalable and is doomed to eventual failure. So that's that. We'll take a quick break and go on to interviews from Freeflo conference in Florida.
And they told me the story all about this guy named Lehi who lived in Jerusalem in 600 BC. Now, apparently, in Jerusalem in 600 BC, everyone was completely bad and evil, every single one of them, man, woman, child, infant, fetus. And God came to Lehi and said to him, "Put your family on a boat and I will lead you out of here." And God did lead them. He led them to America. I said, "America? From Jerusalem to America by boat in 600 BC? And they said, yes. Then they told me how Lehi and his descendants reproduced, and over the course of 600 years there were two great races of them, the Nephites and the Lamanites. And the Nephites were totally, totally good, each and every one of them, and the Lamanites were totally bad and evil, every single one of them, just bad to the bone. Then, after Jesus died on the cross for our sins, on his way up to heaven, he stopped by America and visited the Nephites. And he told them that if they all remained totally, totally good, each and every one of them, they would win the war against the evil Lamanites. But apparently somebody blew it, because the Lamanites were able to kill all the Nephites. All but one guy, this guy named Mormon, who managed to survive by hiding in the woods. And he made sure this whole story was written down in reformed Egyptian hieroglyphics chiseled onto gold plates, which he then buried near Palmyra, New York. Well, I was just on the edge of my seat. I said, "What happened to the Lamanites?" And they said, "Well, they became our Native Americans here in the U.S." And I said, "So you believe the Native Americans are descended from a people who were totally evil?" And they said, "Yes." Then they told me how this guy named Joseph Smith found those buried gold plates right in his backyard. And he also found this magic stone back there that he put into his hat and then buried his face into. And this allowed him to translate the gold plates from the Reformed Egyptian into English. Well, at this point, I just wanted to give these two boys some advice about their pitch. I wanted to say, okay, don't start with this story. I mean, even the Scientologists know to start with a personality test before they start telling people all about Xenu, the evil intergalactic overlord.
All right, everybody, I'm at Freeflo conference in Florida, and now I'm actually recording. Last time I forgot to hit the button, but you guys will never know that. Oh, shit, no, I just told you. I am here with Keith McCullough, and he's got a big project that he's working on, and so I wanted just to chat with him and see what's going on.
Yes, my photo project is called Faces of the Faithless. We started a atheist community in our little area in Polk County, Florida. When we started out, I thought maybe we would have maybe 12, 15 people, but it's grown over 200 people within the last 7 months. So I had no idea there was that many people around that was atheist.
I'm sorry, I cut you off there. That's just your area. That's just Polk County.
That's just Polk County. That just prompted this idea to me where I want to get as many atheists, non-believers, agnostics, take their portraits and compile them all into one image where they just all just look like tiles, and just to show the public just how many of us there are out there.
Now I'm looking at some images here on the easel. They're all black and white, and some of them are shadow only. What's going on there?
Those are the ones that can't come out and show their face in fear of losing their job, being outed to their family. So they can't show their face.
All right, so you said you have over 700, and now you're branching out. You took a picture of someone from Illinois. So what's that all about?
Some guy just rolled up on me. I don't know who this guy is. He just wanted to get his picture taken, so I was kind of scared, and I just kind of had to take it. So, yeah.
All right, so you've got this collage here, I guess. Is it going to become something greater? Like, are they all going to mesh magically into one person's face, like the atheist god Dawkins or something?
Yes, it's going to be Matt Dillahunty's face. It's all going to come together to Matt Dillahunty's face. So.
And is there going to be a book or a movie?
That I'm not sure yet. That's in the works. We'll see when we get there.
Yeah, you do the Trump thing. We'll see. We'll see. It's going to be something amazing, bigger and better. If someone is in the area, yes. Maybe and they want to show up at your studio for pictures, how can they reach you?
They can reach me at facebook.com/Faces of the Faithless. That's the best way to get a hold of me. Polkatheist.org is a way to get a hold of me. And those are the only two options.
And you mentioned this Polk thing. I'm assuming it's a county. And tell me about your group and what you do.
The Atheists of Polk County. I guess it's the largest county in Florida.
I'll take your word for it.
It's garbage. It's a garbage place, but it's a real rural area. Rednecks, crazy. We just started a community there in March. So we got 200 people in our group so far. So it's pretty promising.
Now, when you say biggest, I mean, is that geography, people? It's not amusement parks, obviously.
No, nothing there. Well, we got Legoland.
Legoland. Where is Polk County from here? We're in Orlando now.
It's probably about 45 minutes south from here, but you're going on I-4, so it's going to be about 2 hours.
Well, I may have to check out the Legoland next time I'm in Central Florida. Well, thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Now I have tracked down Monica Miller with AHA, and she's got some kind of legal title that I forgot what the fuck it was. So maybe she'll tell us. Maybe she doesn't even care herself. Monica, how are you?
I am good, thanks. My title is Senior Counsel and Legal Director at the American Humanist Association.
American Humanist Association. And you've been on the show earlier this year. You were talking about something. You went to the Supreme Court, right?
That's right, Phil. I went to the Supreme Court in February of this last year.
And how did that go?
Well, it went as we expected, which was that we didn't win, but we were actually not extremely disappointed with the outcome. We were able to prevent the court from overturning the precedent that our opponents were seeking to overturn. So we did a little damage control.
That was the Bladensburg Cross. Is that correct?
That is correct. A 40-foot tall cross in the middle of one of the busiest intersections in Prince George's County, Maryland.
That's the cross that's concrete and looks like shit?
It is not the most attractive cross. It has been crumbling. It's cost taxpayers thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to repair, and it is, at least according to their experts, kind of beyond repair.
And, of course, we're now in Orlando. I think we're in Orlando, the Freeflo conference right by the airport. Tell us about what you're doing here and what's new with AHA.
Sure. So I am here both as a speaker, but also we are sitting here at the American Humanist Association's table. We're passing out information about humanism. I am here to talk tomorrow about the Supreme Court case and sort of a behind-the-scenes look at what it was like to argue before the High Court and what went into the preparations, what we're doing now in the aftermath, and yeah. So
I'm still thinking, holy shit. You were in the Supreme Court. Does that ever, you have that feeling? Do you get that holy shit feeling?
Yeah, every once in a while I do, especially when, I kind of go months without remembering it, or, maybe not remembering, but I don't think about it. And then every once in a while I will see a picture of Ginsburg or something, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I did that.
Now, one fun thing we were talking about before we recorded, did you say letters? We could talk about letters that you get? Are these our fan mail?
Well, actually, we do get fan mail, but the letters that I was referring to are demand letters. So while we're not always going to be bringing lawsuits, we send a lot of letters to local government entities to stop church-state violations before having to bring them to court. And we've had several successes in the last month.
So if I understand this correctly, some random citizen in the United States of America, saw something they thought might be a problem. You guys investigated it a little bit. You wrote a letter, and often a letter is just enough. Is that correct? And can you give me an example?
That is correct, that often a letter is enough. In this recent incident, so I'll explain what that was, a parent came to us whose child was a first grader in a public school, was slated to go on a field trip to a Christian venue. It was like a Christian university to watch a very religious play. And this was first graders, and it was a school field trip. So the parent was rightfully very affronted by this and kind of was surprised that they thought that would be appropriate for a field trip. So we wrote a letter with, giving them about a week to cancel the trip and come up with something new. The school actually didn't respond by canceling it, and it was the night before the event. So I sent a very clear email saying, I will sue you personally in your personal capacity as the principal because you've been warned that what you are going to do is violating the First Amendment. So we'll go after you for personal damages. And then the field trip was canceled.
Oh, neat. So a whole bunch of kids didn't get to go get indoctrinated and or possibly worse by some ministerial type of person.
Right, correct. And I think that I don't remember what they ended up doing instead, but I believe they went to a secular, a venue and maybe a bowling alley. I don't remember what it was, but.
And I think somewhere within the last year, you guys had a conference and you tried a multi-location conference. When's your next one? Is it going to be multiple cities, or are you going back to just everybody being in one place?
Great question. So actually, this upcoming conference is going to be in Miami. It is the World Humanist Conference, and so we are just doing the one location. You can find out more information on our website, AmericanHumanist.org.
Do you happen to know the dates?
Not off the top of my head, but I should.
All right, I'll stall. Wait, no, you're not going to look at your phone. That's okay. I'll add it later in the show. Don't worry about it. Don't worry. But that's this year, 2020. So I may have a great excuse to come back to Florida again. Anything else we should know about AHA and what you guys are doing right now?
I think just everyone should still, remain vigilant and report violations. If you're not sure if there's a violation, you're free to email us and ask. We just want people to report as many violations to us as possible because even if we're not going to run to court right away, we do send these letters and they are effective.
Monica, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me.
I'm still wandering around Freeflo talking to people, and now I've come across David Williamson, and he is one of the organizers with his wife. It's wife, right?
Yes, Jocelyn Williamson is my lovely wife and partner in the Free Thought movement.
Phil can't handle the microphone. Sorry about that. Jocelyn Williamson, and you're David Williamson. So tell us about your organization, about this conference, and, of course, about the really cool cruises so that my listeners can find something new to do.
Thanks, Phil. So we are here at Freeflo, which is the Free Thought Florida Conference. It's a biennial event that is brought to you by the Florida Humanist Association as a fundraiser, a modest fundraiser for scholarships for Florida secular college students. And this happens every other year as of the last 6 years. Before that, it was annually. And we're at a record this year at 350 people. Sold the event out, having to turn some folks away, especially from dinner and some of the events. So it's been a lot of fun so far.
Now, you said biannually. That means this is 2019, and it won't happen in 2020, but next is 2021. Do you have any details for that?
We do not, but we want to start planning earlier. I think a year out is enough time for this level of conference planning, but the farther out we plan it, the better it'll be. So we'll probably start a little earlier.
And my wife, Robin, and I went on one of your cruises earlier this year. Oh, shit. Tell us about that cruise and if you're doing another one.
Yeah, so the cruises are also a work of myself and Jocelyn as part of another organization. So the Central Florida Free Thought Community is the local Orlando area group that puts on the cruise, and we'll be going on our 7th one with Arn and Lalandra Ra in March this year, and we will probably go biennial on those as well. Give ourselves a little bit of a break between the events, but we definitely have a lot of volunteers helping with the conference. The cruise is a little less work and a little more intimate, but 100 people on a boat with one another over the week or weekend. In this case, we're going to be out for a week. You were out for a weekend when Matt Dillahunty came. But yeah, so you can go to freethoughtcruise.com and find out more about that, and we will be planning them in the future.
And I just want to make sure for the listeners, when you say this year, we're in 2019, but you mean for March of 2020, and then maybe it'll go to every other year. We'll play that by ear. What are the cool places you guys are going to during that entire week?
So yes, the cruises generally to similar ports in the Caribbean. There's not a lot of options for short cruises this year. And I say this year because it's the cruise year, but you're right, it is 2020 for that cruise. We're going to be going to Ocho Rios, Jamaica. We're going to be going to Cozumel. We're going to be going to the Grand Cayman. And we're going to go to a private beach that belongs to the cruise line in the Bahamas. So those are 4 days in port, and then we have 2 days at sea. But generally, we just go to 1 or 2 ports, and it tends to be Mexico or the Bahamas just because that's where the cruise ships are going out of Florida.
Now, you had said 100 people on a boat. I just want to make sure that I'm clear. It's 100 people with the cruise/party/convention-ish kind of thing. But the boat is much bigger. How big is the boat this year? Because I'm guessing it's going to be a lot bigger.
I don't know what the capacity is, but these ships are generally in the few thousands of people. But last year we had 1 in 30 people on the boat were part of our event. So,
yeah, because I think last year they told us it was the smallest boat of their entire cruise line because it's the only one that would fit in the port of Cuba. So I'm assuming this is going to be a much bigger boat. So we're talking with tourists and staff. Probably something north of 5,000 people on a boat. That's amazing. And you said Aaron Ra and his wife are going to be there. What else is your group doing, and how's this conference going?
Well, the conference is going great. We're on time this afternoon, which is a good thing for conference coordinators. We've got a dinner planned this evening, and then super-duper science trivia with Dr. Dan Batcheldor, which is always a blast. He does a fantastic job, and we've got prizes to give away, and we've got some fantastic sponsors that have come together to help make this happen. We're looking at an entire weekend event, started on Friday night with the costume party last night, and so it's a full weekend of events. What else is going on? So the Florida Humanist Association is generally doing the conference. That's our fundraiser for the year, which actually funds 2 years of scholarships. The Central Florida Free Thought community, we've got the regular local community types of things going on, but a big project we have is secular invocations. We're up to about 80 secular invocations since the Grease v. Galloway decision from the Supreme Court about the issue in 2014. And it's going like gangbusters. The cities and towns have been really cooperative. The ones that haven't got sued and lost.
Well, David, thank you so much for taking a few minutes out of this busy conference to come talk to me. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks, Phil.
Our journey continues here at Freeflo, and I'm just wandering around. You can hear all the fun noise here in the vendor room. And I ran into this guy, what's his name? Seth Andrews. Seth, how are you?
I'm well. You know, I love being at Freeflo because I get to explain to people who aren't attendees what it is, because they think it's like a seminar on incontinence or something. And I'm like, no, it's a free thought. It's a humanist event. And then they're like, oh, what's a humanist? And then we get to have that conversation. But no, it's been good. It's been a good weekend. Everybody's been fantastic, and I'm a happy guy. So.
And I know you have a little podcast. You can do some videos. Where can people find more information about those?
Well, seeing as how I'm an ex-evangelical Christian, I came out of a faith culture, and so I started a website called The Thinking Atheist, meaning that we reject faith and embrace thought, reason. The Thinking Atheist is not a person. It is an idea. It is a concept, an encouragement. And so that website, which has my podcast every week, and it has videos and has other links to resources, books and blogs and YouTube pages and what have you, is thethinkingatheist.com.
And just to clarify, of course, that is not you. You are not. That is not you. You gave a talk today about, rationality, trying to understand a situation, or at least maybe acknowledging you don't know all the facts. I didn't hear you use my favorite phrase of yours, the outrage brigade. Tell us about your talk a little bit.
Well, I mean, it's not about the outrage brigade as much as it is about an entire culture that's trying to make decisions based on a Twitter post of 280 characters. And we talked about this situation from early this year, Nick Sandman over at Covington Catholic School, and how this 56-second video clip went ultra viral, and everybody started to form very serious opinions, and there was a lot of vitriol online. But there's an hour and 40-minute video of context before that climactic event that people hadn't seen, and that they didn't get the full story, and yet they were many of them unwilling to want to talk about it. And I thought we as skeptics and rationalists have to put away our, the passions that we have about the things that matter to enough of a degree that we can at least assemble the information. We've got to be able to say, well, what happened and where did it happen and who were all the players and what's the context? And there is a group of people who believe that if you pause at all to find out what the hell's going on, you're either weak or you're a coward or you're a sympathizer. And they believe that if you are a weak, coward, a sympathizer, that you are human garbage, that you should be written off, you're part of the enemy camp, and it's this purity test that you fail. And I just refuse to live in that world. I just refuse to live in a world where we exist in the outer extremes, vilifying everybody who has either a differing opinion or wants to talk about something else. And, not everybody who disagrees with us is a Nazi. And it's time that we cool off a little bit and try to regain our own humanity as we deal with these problems and challenges before us.
Well, I know one of the problems with social media, of course, is it's not a conversational format where you and I or somebody else can talk and interject and pause and say, I don't think that was what I really said. I'm sorry I confused you. And then, of course, a third and a fourth and a fifth person jump in, and everyone brings their biases. And like you said, they want to say it quick and as short as possible because you've got to grab attention. But people also seem to want to scale it up and make it into a fight and a big battle. What can people do to resist that temptation?
Well, I said in the speech that we are and have always been a species of tribes. But with social media, we are now a step disconnected from each other. We're now arguing with the avatar, the two-dimensional photograph, the glass of the smartphone separates us between that and a person who may be on the other side of the world. And we realize other people are watching, so it becomes less about discourse and more about winning. For me to look good, I need you to look bad, those types of things. Being aware of all of this is, I think, a first step. Understanding the damage that we're doing to discourse by immediately throwing gasoline on every single spark. We're going to have to restore a bit of our own humanity and realize that we are dealing with humanity. We're dealing with people, complex people. Many of them have horrible ideas. They're either propagating horrible ideas and or they are victims of bad ideas. And we need to be in the business of trying to rescue people who are victims of bad ideas. I'm a huge fan of street epistemology, starting with questions, getting people to defend where they got to a conclusion, how they had sort of arrived at this particular position without shouts, screaming, insults, invective thrown in every direction, without labeling everybody human garbage. I think there's a way to take people, even with really opposing views, put them in the same room and allow them a chance to hash things out. And you never know. I mean, I was once married to some pretty bad ideas, and I was able to be reasoned out of them. And a lot of activists I see on a lot of different fronts used to have really bad ideas, and they were reasoned out of them. And I think that needs to be the goal. Let's try to reason people out of unreasonable ideas.
Well, Seth, thank you so much for your time. It's always good to see you.
It's an honor, my friend. Thanks for talking to me.
All right, now I see down the hall Debbie Goddard. Hang on a second. Let's get down there. Hey, Debbie, you got a few seconds? Phil here for the Phil Ferguson Show, of course. Can we talk to you for a few minutes?
Yeah, hey, Phil. Nice to see you. Sure.
And one of the rules I forgot to tell Debbie, the microphone only picks up straight ahead. So if I ask you a question, you got to wait for me to get the microphone to you. You switched jobs, and you went from CFI to American Atheists. Walk us through that and tell us about the great things you're doing now at American Atheists.
Sure. I switched jobs. I left CFI back in the middle of December, moved to North Jersey where American Atheists is headquartered to start working there as the new vice president of programs. It's been really interesting 10 months or so. Oh, God, coming up on 11 months. Not just because I moved back into like a denser and more expensive area.
So one of the things coming up in the spring of 2020 is the American Atheist Convention. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, the convention will be Easter weekend, April 9th through 12th in Phoenix, Arizona. We are starting to confirm speakers now. The speaker proposal form just closed last week, so we should be announcing them starting in a few weeks. It's going to be exciting. There are going to be more workshops than we've had at previous conventions, focused on training, not just local group leaders, but people who are interested in getting more involved in advocacy, community building, all kinds of stuff, workshops, and a lot of representation by other national organizations so that they can have a part to reach the constituencies that they're best suited to reach. We'll also have some different state representatives, or I should say local elected officials from Arizona at different levels of government who are going to be on the program. Can't tell you who yet because we're still working on some of those confirmations, but that'll be exciting, that component. I'm also reaching out to some ex-Mormon groups, since that's such a big presence in that region of the country in Utah and Arizona. We may do a sort of ex-Mormon caucus sort of support group. We've talked about a couple different ideas for what that community needs most and what kinds of things that they're involved in where they live. So, yeah, I'm excited to start hammering out that schedule and program better. We hope to have a good student presence as well. We've been growing in that area over the last couple of years. So it'll be my second American Atheist Convention I get to work on. I'm hitting the ground running on this one.
Excellent. And I know you're not an attorney, you're not in the law stuff, but before we were talking about a case that you mentioned that's coming up. Can you tell us a little bit about it and why it's important?
Sure. There's a case called Espinoza versus Montana. I forget the name, but it's coming up. It'll be held. It's gone to the Supreme Court, and it had to do with kind of the details of it in Montana were particular. It seemed that could the government give money for something that is like a voucher program, a scholarship program, but families could use that money on religious schools. And if there was a complaint that because some of that money was going to religious schools, the program shouldn't exist and the state closed it, was that unfair? Was that an unfair treatment of religion? So the case will be heard by the Supreme Court in January. It's not on a lot of people's radar, which is a concern, and we're actually working now to start working with other groups who may be working on this issue to see what kind of response we can have as that goes through. But there are concerns with the current state of the Supreme Court of where that can go, relating to voucher programs and government allowing funding of not just religious schools, but other religious institutions. There have been some other recent cases that have related to that. Can a state government give money to programs to, repave playgrounds or something if it's at a church? Well, in the past, the answer was no, and more recently, the answer is, yeah, that's kind of okay for at least this one specific church. So we've seen a weakening of the wall of separation between church and state in these instances. The Supreme Court has a lot of power there, of course, to make decisions that have a huge impact across our nation that can harm a lot of different people. So we're keeping our eye on it and seeing what we can do to get people more informed of this and figure out a good response.
So, of course, everybody, you heard all about the conference in April. I do expect to be there. Hopefully you can go too. And, of course, American Atheist is fighting the good fight to try to keep church and state separate. It's been a rough battle the last few years. Debbie, thank you so much for taking a few minutes out of your time. And I know you've been tabling here all weekend, so I appreciate it very much. Thank you for being on the Phil Ferguson Show.
Yeah, Phil, it's always great to see you, and thanks for having me on.
The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Your investment should be based on your situation, and you should consult with your financial advisor before taking any action. The show may contain ads. These ads are placed into the show by the hosting company after I finish recording and editing. I have little control over the content of the ads, and you should not assume that I support their products or claims. If you choose to support the show via the new Patreon page, that support does not create an advisor-client relationship.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show.
Well, everybody, we're going to have a long episode today because we had all the stuff from Freeflo, and now I have someone I met at the CSI conference just a few weeks ago in Las Vegas, Michael Albrow. How are you, Michael?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you, Phil?
I am doing well, and I'm curious. You told me, but my listeners won't know, of course. What was your former job and you're kind of now doing in retirement?
Right, it's research in particle physics, that is subatomic particles that are actually much, much smaller than atoms and even smaller than protons now. And I've been doing that research for about 50 years and got my PhD 50 years ago this year, actually, at Manchester. You can probably tell I'm a Brit, I'm from England, and I did a bachelor's degree at Birmingham. They talked like that in Birmingham, and then in Manchester they talk more like that. And then 50 years ago, which, by the way, was when the first men walked on the moon, and by the way, that happened the night before my PhD oral exam, so I was up till 2 in the morning watching it.
Nice.
It was earlier in America, but this was in England.
Well, it may.
I was a bit sleepy for my PhD oral exam.
I was alive then, by the way.
You were alive.
Yeah, I was 2.
Yeah. Right, 50 years ago. So then I got my PhD and went out to CERN, Geneva, Switzerland, which is the big international physics laboratory now that has the biggest accelerator in the world by far. I was 18 years there, and then I left to go to Sweden, to Stockholm, where I was professor there. We didn't settle there. My wife, who was French, and she missed Geneva, and she had a job to get back to, so she went down there. And then, anyway, long story short, I decided to move across the pond. I got a position at Fermilab, which is, as you know, not far from Chicago. It had then the highest energy accelerator in the world, which is 4 miles around. And they collided protons going around one way and antiprotons going around the other way. They had to make the antiprotons by slapping beams into targets. That was then the highest energy machine in the world, but they closed it down 6 years ago to all our resources focused on other stuff, which is either the Large Hadron Collider in Geneva, Switzerland, which is where I'm working now. And although I retired 3 years ago, I'm still doing physics there because I'm still addicted to the stuff. They just don't pay me anymore, but they let me keep an office and computer and stuff like that. So I'm good with that. And I'm right now busy and excited about getting a new project started for the Large Hadron Collider. We'll see if that works out, but it's looking feasible or possible.
Excellent.
But,
is that secret, or can
I'm
you
too old
discuss
to run
it?
that thing. I just need to get it started and find some young, enthusiastic, ambitious young person to lead it.
Is that
I plant the seed.
Is that
I plant
something?
the seed and water it.
Sure. Is that something you can tell us about, or is it still secret?
Well, it's not secret at all, but there are the Large Hadron Collider. It's 16 miles around in a vacuum pipe underground with superconducting magnets to steer the protons around in circles. And they have protons going around in both directions, and they let them collide at 4 places where there are massive detectors with thousands of physicists working on these from all over the world. And it's a very interesting place to work because it shows people can collaborate from no matter what country you're from. The science is multinational. It's not, there isn't one science or another science. And so on our project, we have, probably physicists from over 80 countries working together, and we're able to collaborate on that, which is great. Now, most of these projects are looking at particles that are created in the collision out of the energy of the collision, and energy turns into mass in the form of new particles, and everybody knows E equals mc squared. Energy and mass are different aspects of the same thing, as Einstein showed, and so the energy of the collision turns into new particles, and Fermilab here, before they closed the tevatron, we discovered the heaviest known fundamental particle, which is called a top quark. Now, quarks are little tiny, tiny particles that live inside protons and neutrons and rattle around in there. And protons and neutrons are made of 2 different types called up and down, just fancy names. Proton has 2 ups and 1 down. Neutron 2 downs and 1 up. Anyway, there were more heavy quarks found that are very unstable, and at Fermilab we found one that is nearly 200 times more massive than a proton on one tiny, tiny particle that's thousands of times smaller than the proton.
Yeah.
So that's incredible. And we found that. I could go on for too long, and I should not rattle on too long about that.
I'm doing well.
CERN, we found another new particle called the Higgs boson that made a lot of press because it's a very interesting fundamental particle that shows that there is a field that fills the whole universe that gives particles like electrons and quarks their masses. And this field was thought up by some theorists about 50 years ago. And the Higgs said if this field really exists, there should be a particle that goes with it. And we searched for it and searched for it and searched for it. And finally, at CERN, the Large Hadron Collider had enough energy and enough collisions to find it. And that was exciting too. And I was one small part of a big team doing that. So that was exciting. But now, what I'm doing right now is trying to get a new detectors designed and installed and a group put together to put these down the beam pipe, because particles from the collision actually, many of them just travel very small angles down the beam pipe and they don't get detected there. But there's a way of doing it, and I think it's interesting. So that's what I'm excited about right now, actually.
That is absolutely fantastic, and maybe at some point we'll have you on for a much longer physics thing, because I don't know if you recall or if we talked about it. My original intended degree in college was astronomy, and then I switched to physics. So I do know a teeny weeny bit about physics, and so it would be a fun conversation. The other fun thing that you've got is you have created a game, and you wanted to talk about that. Can you walk us through the game and how people can play along?
Right. Yeah, thanks. So, yes, this was, I think I had been for a few years just collecting, I see a wise quotation. Somebody said something, some wise words, and I just collected them. I got an Excel spreadsheet, and when I got more than 100 or so of these things, I thought, well, what can I do with this collection? I'd like to share it with people. It's got a lot of wisdom there. And so I thought up a game. Being old-fashioned, I thought a card game rather than an electronic game. But this game is called Wise Words, and I got it designed professionally and trademarked and so on. And the idea of the game is that you have 2 packs of cards in a box, and each card has got a different quotation on it. And one pack is more pop culture, like film stars, pop stars, and singers, and so on. And the other is more serious, like scientists, philosophers, politicians, statesmen, whatever. And at the first, I thought the game would be that people had to know the quotation after having read out the beginning of it, but that wasn't much fun when you played it, because, except for my little grandson who was 8, and he learned the whole pack to beat his big sister at it. But anyway, then it changed into a much more fun version, which is where one player is, for typically 3 to 10 players or so, but it can be done with a big group as well. But a player reads out the beginning of a quotation, and everybody has to write down the funniest or silliest completion. I said wittiest, but apparently that's an Anglicism, completion. So let me just give you an example. Right, one is the reader reads out, "It's never too late to have a," and then people can write down whatever they think of, a third martini, or to have a facelift, or whatever. And then they're read out. The funniest one wins the card, usually by acclamation, the amount of laughter, but the reader can make a judge and people can contest it. But the key point is that whoever wins the card by having the best response, not the true response, but before they get it, the reader reads out the full thing. In this case, do you know what it is? It's never too late to have a. Do you know what the real one is? And the real quote that I got was, "It's never too late to have a happy childhood." Interesting. That was said by Tom Robbins, an American author, and it gives his date of 1932 too. I think he's still with us. Anyway, that was the way the game is played, and the first person to win, let's say, 3 cards, that's the end of the round. They don't get money unless you it can be played by all ages, because the answers are not given. Like in some games, like Cards Against Humanity, the possible answers are given, but that's a game you don't want to play with kids, because it's a sort of adult game. You can play this adults only if you wish, because you're making up the answers, but it also can be played kid-friendly. Anyway, long story short, I've got this game. It's been sitting on my back shelf for 2 years. And about a couple of months ago, I met a young student in marketing, younger than me anyway. So I said, look, I've got this game sitting there. Can you get a fundraising Kickstarter campaign going for me? So she said she could, and she did. So we've got that going now. And its deadline is in 2 weeks, on the 21st. And I'm asking people to back my project, which they can do by going to the website, bit.ly/wisewordsthegame. wisewordsthegame. And for a $16 bid, you'll get, if I reach my goal, you'll get this twin pack of 140 great cards. If I don't reach my goal, then I'm sorry, but your credit card does not get charged. But then I've learned lessons about how to do this, and I may do it again.
Yeah, excellent. Now, if my listeners are experts in Kickstarter, they'll be able to find it probably with wise words. I was very successful the first time looking up wise words game cards, and it came right up in the top of my Google search results.
That's great.
And went
Very
there. Good. And I'm assuming no donation is too big. Would that be fair to say?
No donation is too big. And by the way, so I have a couple of charities that I've pledged to donate 5% of any profit I make to each. One is NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Ill, and the other is it's a conservation foundation that works to preserve natural waters and so on and so forth. So if I do start making any money with this game, then I will be donating to those charities. But yeah, no donation is too big. Thank you. And $16 minimum will get you the game, I get my goal. But it's really great value anyway. So all that wisdom, and people get to hear the wise words, and they maybe actually retain some wisdom.
Yeah. Well, and of course, this show is going out early, almost middle November, and this does end November 21st. And I happen to know from statistics that most people will listen to the show the first few days, and then, of course, the first week that it's out. So hopefully some of my listeners like this idea and can go to Kickstarter and kick in a few bucks. And I'm assuming unless this starts selling millions and millions of units, you're not going to make a whole lot, even if it does take off. So this is not something so you can retire. This is something to create a little fun, share a little wisdom. Yeah.
I'm retired. I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it to get the game out there because it's fun, and I think people will enjoy it, and also bring some positive thinking. And I was lucky to have, actually, there's a monthly newspaper, freebie, pick it up in bookshops and so on, and Positively Naperville. And I've been donating to them a column every month on science called Science Corner every month for the last nearly 3 years. And they don't pay me, but it's good for my writing skills. And you can see those online, Positively Naperville. Michael Albrow will get there. And they put a nice half-page article about it, headed Naperville resident creates new game to bring back bygone days of silliness. And it's kind of nice article. I was interviewed by the editor there.
Yeah, so, well, what I like
is... If
you
live in Naperville, you can see that.
Yeah, it has the feel of other recent card games, and the fun and interactive, but instead of just pointless stuff, it has some words of wisdom. So I like that very much, and I think my listeners can go again. The game is called Wise Words, and it's on Kickstarter, and the time frame is very short on this, so if anybody wants to go kick in a few bucks and see if we can make this happen, that would be fantastic. And Michael, I do appreciate you coming on very much, and unless I've forgotten something, we'll wrap up, but do you have anything else to add in?
No, thanks very much. Yeah. Wise Words, the game will get you there. And just another thing that I just got news this week, because I do acting sometimes, and I auditioned on Monday and Tuesday for a part in the musical Little Women. And I'm not playing, I got a part, not as a little woman, but as an old man. So I'm going to be doing that in January, February. So that's something that I like to do, which is quite different from physics, but it's a lot of fun. And there we are. So All right.
Good.
So anyway, Phil, I've appreciated discovering your podcast, your columns, and seeing them. They're very interesting. So thank you for doing this with me, and that's great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time, Michael. We'll have a great day.
Okay. Thank you, Bill. Bye.
Stephen Fry, the question about the Catholic Church apparently doesn't condemn homosexuality, that question asked.
Well, I'm afraid it simply does. It does condemn it, yes. It calls it, the official word is disorder, but it was refined by the current pontiff, Ratzinger, who called it a moral evil. But on the other hand, we must remember, as the point that was made, is that the Church is very loose on moral evils, because although they try to accuse people like me who believe in the empiricism and the Enlightenment of somehow what they call moral relativism, as if it's some appalling sin, where what it actually means is thought, they, for example, thought that slavery was perfectly fine. Absolutely okay, and then they didn't. They thought until the year 2000 that a baby went to limbo, causing unbelievable distress to parents whose child died.
Okay.
Unbelievable distress. And then, with a wave of the hand and a stamp of a seal, it was no longer true. Something that had been eternally, or at least true for 2,000 years, suddenly wasn't. Because the truth is complicated. It's hard. And what is the point of the Catholic Church if it says, oh, well, we couldn't know better because nobody else did? Then what are you for?
Okay.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show.
It's that time again to wrap up the show. Hopefully you enjoyed listening almost as much as I enjoyed making it. We learned about particle physics. We learned about games. We talked to all kinds of fun people at the Freeflo conference in Florida, which will happen again in 2 years. And I'm going to settle in for the holiday season. I don't think I have any real big travel plans for the next couple of months, but still got to get my work done while taking some time off for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Of course, one thing to keep in mind, because it's near the end of the year, if you have a required minimum distribution from your account, retirement account, beneficiary account, IRAs, Roth IRAs, make sure you get that done. Generally, I recommend people do that in January or February as soon as the data that you need becomes available, so that you don't have to remember it later in the year. So if you have any questions about that, of course, you can always email me, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. Of course, if you like the show, you can leave a, hopefully, 5-star review on iTunes or Stitcher. I do have one very wonderful and thankfully short review on iTunes here by Atheist Roundtable. This podcast this podcast is perfect balance of real financial philosophy and critical atheism. I love this podcast so much. It is the only one in my subscription in which episodes are replayed. Thank you so much, Atheist Roundtable, for those kind words and the 5-star review. If you like the show, again, a 5-star review somewhere helps out the show, helps people find it. And the more reviews, the more real the show looks to new timers, first timers, new people, something like that. The other thing, of course, you can do, and several people have recently done this, I thank you very much. They've gone to Patreon, patreon.com/Phil, and you can become a patron for as little as $1 per show. And again, it's per show, so if I skip a week or take 10 days to get something out, you're not out anything until the next show comes out. And like I said, as little as $1, but of course, there's the special magical level of $6.66 per episode if you are so inclined. Keeping in mind, of course, that this is just a way for you to say that you appreciate the show. It does not create a advisor-client relationship, and it doesn't actually get you anything other than a warm, fuzzy feeling and knowing that you're helping me to keep doing the show to help other people out that maybe can't afford $6.66 an episode. So we're going to wrap it up because I think we had a wonderful show already, and I wanted to ruin that. I appreciate you listening very much. Hope to see you somewhere next spring at a conference. Until then, ciao.